Hi everybody, and welcome to today's webinar talking about Volunteers Week 2019. Hope you're all sitting comfortably as we just get ready to talk through what's going to be happening for the Volunteers Week campaign this year. Just a couple of introductions to start off with. My name's Shaun. I'm the Volunteering Development Manager here at NCVO and work a lot on the Volunteers Week campaign. Liz, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm Liz Woodman. I'm the Volunteering Development Assistant and I help coordinate the Volunteers Week campaign.
Lovely, thank you very much. We've also got Clarissa and Rob here in the room with us today who's helping us out on the technical side, so don't let them feel lonely. If you've got any questions or comments that you want to send in, please do tap them into the questions box there that you should see on your screen now. Feel free to send over questions at any time through the webinar. We will be stopping a couple of times throughout the course of the presentation just to answer some of your questions as they come in. So don't be shy and just feel free to message over anything that you want. One other thing, just to reassure you, we are going to make the recording of this webinar available after the session today, so don't feel like you have to take lots and lots of notes as you're going through, where you will be able to log on and have a look at all of the details afterwards. So before we get cracking though, we'd like to hear a little bit from you first of all about a bit about yourselves and kind of the approach that you're coming at Volunteers Week from. So we're going to start off the webinar with a poll, so you can tell us how many volunteers you have with your organisation. So in a second you'll just see the screen change and the questions will come up. Just if you wouldn't mind, just take a couple of seconds to click up on the screen there how many volunteers you have within your organisation that you're looking to celebrate and thank during this year's Volunteers Week. This will help as well. Just give us a bit of a sense about who's on the call today. I think we've got a little over 100 people signed in just at the moment, and it will just give us a little bit of time to let anybody else that is looking to log in and maybe taking a few seconds to do that as well. So over to Clarissa then. What do we have then? So the poll results are in. Most people are having between about 21 and 100 volunteers that are on the call today, but a good spread actually between 0 to 20 right through to 2,000 plus. So a nice even spread. What we'll try and do then today through to today's presentation is as well then keep a bit of a bear in mind the size of organisations and the numbers of volunteers that you're working with there. Thanks, Clarissa. So what are we going to talk about on today's webinar? Let's have a look at the agenda for today. We're going to start off by just an introduction to Volunteers Week 2019. What is it and why do we have it? Then I'm going to hand over to Liz, who will give us a tour of the resources that are available on the website, and also a little look at the events listing and how you might use that to publicise your events. We were hoping to have a couple of organisations come and talk about how they celebrate Volunteers Week here today, but unfortunately they couldn't make it. So we've got a quote from an organisation about how they've celebrated before from one of our partner organisations. Then I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking about how to get involved on social media during the week and to give you a run through about what's happening during Volunteers Week and what NCVO is going to be doing as well. So I hope that all sounds good to you. So to start off with, Volunteers Week, what is it? So Volunteers Week is a UK-wide campaign, and NCVO works alongside partners in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland to support organisations, thousands upon thousands of organisations, to take some time to celebrate volunteers in all sorts of things that they do. This is the 35th year that the campaign has been running now. It takes place on the 1st to the 7th of June every year, and it's for charities, voluntary groups to get together to recognise the contribution that volunteers make. And when we do talk about volunteering, we're talking about volunteering in all its diversity. So thinking about your trustee board as volunteers within the campaign, through to those that are giving time to your organisation in a formal way, right through to those that just might dip in and out of volunteering within your organisation. Each and every one of the ones that we counted up on the first poll matter. So we're looking at celebrating them all. So how big is Volunteers Week? We get asked that question quite a lot, actually. And I thought we'd give you some stats from last year to give you a bit of sense of that. So last year, we tried to count up the number of press items that existed and media items through the week, and it was talked about 2,644 times in the press, which is a little bit up from the previous year. And in looking at that, we think we managed to reach around 28.5 million people just through those that were interacting with the press and media items. The campaign's also quite big on social media. The Twitter impressions for the Volunteers Week hashtag last year was 700,000, over 700,000. And also the last bullet point on the slide there shows you that Volunteers Week did trend in the UK and worldwide on the first day of Volunteers Week last year. We normally have between about 650 and 800 events registered on the website, and the website events listing is quite popular, in particular with local politicians, councillors, mayors, and the local press as well, about finding out what's going on locally near them. Also, we have the Volunteers Week website, which we relaunched last year, and we're pretty pleased with it. And one of the main reasons is it was very well used. So we had a little under 13,000 resources downloaded from the website last year. A little over 5,000 people registered on the site to be able to use those resources, and Liz will talk about those in just a moment. But through the week as well, almost 17,000 people logged onto the website to download resources, or also logged on to have a look at the blogs and the volunteering stories that we posted throughout the week too. So that gives you a bit of a sense of what was going on through the week last year. Some more stats for you, just on volunteering more generally. Volunteering is a big deal, and it does get a lot of attention because 38%, so 2 out of 5 people in the UK population volunteer at least once a year, with 1 in 5 people volunteering at least once a month. So it's a huge number. 20 million people across the UK, we believe. And also we know that volunteering contributes an estimated £22.6 billion to the UK economy. So we can see why this particular week is important. But in the importance of the week, we've got quite a clear focus or purpose on what we're trying to achieve through Volunteers Week. And that main primary objective is to recognise, celebrate and thank volunteers and encourage people across the UK to do the same. This is an aim of the campaign that we check in on every year with people that have participated to make sure that we're still focusing the campaign as we need to. And yet every year we all feel that the main drive of the campaign should be to recognise, celebrate and thank volunteers. There are a couple of nice secondary things though that come along when we do that though. Many organisations also find that the profile of their organisation raises because they're putting themselves out there as an organisation that welcomes and involves volunteers. Also, a lot of organisations notice that their level of participation increases just during or following Volunteers Week, that they're able to recruit through Volunteers Week. What we tend to focus on is that we tend to focus on recruitment for the other 51 weeks of the year though. So for Volunteers Week, our prime objective and our aim is around that celebration and that thanks, and those secondary things are those nice extras that come along. For those that have been involved with the campaign over a few years as well, you might remember the different themes that we've had across the years. This year we've decided to return to our roots and focusing on that core message of time to celebrate. Celebrating all the great things that volunteers do in the massive range that they do them. So you'll see this theme and this line, time to celebrate, on all of the Volunteers Week material and logos that you'll find across the Volunteers Week website and resources. And speaking of resources, I'm now going to hand over to Liz to let you know a little bit more about what those resources are and where you can find them. Hey Liz.
Thanks, Shaun. Okay, so what I'd like to do is give you a very brief tour of the resources on our website, which hopefully you've already had a chance to have a bit of a look at, but if not, after this webinar, you can head straight over there. The Volunteers Week website has many freely available resources for you to download and use. And what I'm going to do is just run through the various sections that you can see in front of you now, just to let you know what's there and what we're providing. But first, in order to get any of the resources, you have to log in. Now, if you've already registered an account and you've logged in before, then you should just be able to put your email and your password in there and get in and then download the resources. But if you haven't, you need to create an account. That's really straightforward. We just need a few basic details. You will then receive an email into your inbox where you just have to authorize that. And so remember to check in your junk email folder just in case it goes there. But once that's all set up, you then should be able to log in and download away. The first thing that you'll find in our resource section is the logo pack. And here we have logos, various versions, which you can then download and you can put on your own resources, and you're welcome to use them as you need in order to enhance the week. We've also got a section on promoting your events, and here you will find an event checklist to tell you exactly what you need to know about events. There is once again the ability to get the Volunteers Week logos, and you've got various size logos there. And we also have a promotional poster and flyer for you to use for the week. And then finally on there, you'll see there's an illustration pack, and this is always a really popular thing. We've got lots and lots of different images on there that you can then use to make your publicity look better and can use on social media. We have a section on media and MPs, and so help your celebrations reach more people with our press release and the MP invitation templates. In here you'll find press pack, you'll find MP invitation template, you'll find councillor invitation templates in order to be able to invite people to your events. Then we have a section on social media content. And so this is so you can get the word out on your social media channels. In here we have some countdown imagery, so that in this final month you can basically share how long there is to go before the big week. You've got a Facebook photo banner which you can add to your Facebook profile, and you've got a Twitter banner. You've also got an I volunteer sign, which will allow you to write down how you volunteer and to photograph that and to share that on social media. And then we have a section on styling your events. This will allow you to decorate your event or celebration, and this is a really popular section. We've got some excellent bunting on there that you can download, and it's all ready for you to cut out and make. We also have a banner, and we have a poster that has lots of volunteering statistics on it, which proved really popular last year. And then we have a section on saying thank you. And I think this is one of those sections lots of people do go to have a look at. In there, we've got a certificate template. So providing a certificate for your volunteers can be an excellent way to both recognise and to thank them. And we also have some thank you card templates, which hopefully you can either use or might give you just a bit of an idea of a card that you might want to create yourself. So now I'm going to move over to the events listing section. Now, during the week, hundreds of events and celebrations take place across the country, saying thank you to volunteers and recognising their invaluable and diverse contribution to the UK. And you can find out what's happening near you by looking at our events listing. And this gives you an idea what it looks like on the site. You can search by location, you've got categories you can pick, and you can also look at dates. At the moment, you'll see we've got over 100 events on there, but by the time the week comes, there's going to be loads more there. And you can, of course, also put up your events onto our website. And we would really encourage you to do this. It's really simple. You just click on the button and you then can register your event. You can put a picture in there as well. You can say what type of event it is. You can say that if it's an online event or public or private. And it's a fantastic way to get out there what you're doing, but also to raise your profile. We often have lots of press inquiries and they'll want to know exactly what's going on in their area, but also it's just a great way to celebrate what you're doing for Volunteers Week. So now over to some questions, and over to Shaun again.
Hey, thanks Liz. So if you do have any questions, we'll just take a brief pause for you to tap away, type in any thoughts or questions you've got so far on either the resources that you've had a look at or the events listing. I think it's fair to say that the events listing is probably one of our more popular pages too. And as Liz mentioned, it's from now really some of our partners, people like the press, are getting in touch with us and wanting to look to see what is going on in their area. So I'd say now we're in the final month countdown. It is a good idea to try and get your events listings up as soon as you can, really. What I really like about the events listing in particular is this year we've added a share button onto it as well. Not the singer, but more if you want to share the event on social media, you're able to click on a Twitter link directly from the event and send it out to your social network. So let's just have a look on the slide here and see what questions we've got. Jenny, thanks for sending in your question. The question there is there any way we can get a volunteer story on your website? Thanks, Jenny. What I would probably say is if you've got a story that you're interested in getting over to us, there is a contact form on the website. So drop in there a little sentence or two about what that story is. We're a month to go, I'll be honest, most of the stories are already filled up, and the authors of those blogs for the actual website itself is pretty jam-packed. But if you've got a brilliant story, still do send in your thoughts on what that story could be. We'll pass it over to our colleague in the team, Jarina, to have a look at it, and we'll see if we can squeeze it in at all. What I would also say though is it's not just about the website. We were really surprised that last year with barely any promotion, Facebook attracted about 4,000 visits a day. So it's still well worth sending in your stories, and if we can't get them on the website, we'll certainly do what we can to promote them through Facebook and get your organisation some visibility that way. And obviously as well through Instagram and Twitter. Lovely. So Monica, what events have you found to be of success in previous years? Well, Monica, I think that's a really interesting question, actually. I think a lot of it depends on what you're trying to achieve as well. So there could be a few reasons why you want to run an event. One could be to make your volunteers just feel thanked and feel recognised and to feel celebrated. And in that sense, I would say think about what your volunteers would like and do something around their interests. So if your volunteers love being outdoors during the day, quite often people have a picnic for them in a nearby park. If they love going to a pub in an evening, going out to a pub quiz just to say thanks to your volunteers is quite a good way of doing that. Some volunteers also like to hear feedback about the sorts of impacts they're having as being a volunteer in your organisation. So building in those sorts of, whether it's a certificate, or some organisations prefer thank you cards with messages from service users, something a bit personalised to let volunteers know the sort of impact they're making is great. On the flip side, some organisations like to do something completely different and go more public. So have a public celebration for their volunteers. And this can be either online, running a webinar like this one, or on Twitter, or it could also be running a volunteer fair, so that you're celebrating your volunteers and they're able to invite their friends and family along. And you never know, you might get some more volunteers that way as well. Liz, I don't know if you've got any more that spring to mind as particularly great events that have happened.
I think some of the really classic ones also seem to be very popular. So anything that involves cakes, certainly thinking of last year where there were pictures of celebrations and tea parties. barbecues, those kind of social events always go down really, really well. But also things like during the week recruitment fairs. So obviously we've talked about the fact that there are various reasons, various benefits to Volunteers Week, and actually recruitment fairs can be really popular during the week and can really help you out as an organisation, but also it can be a way to involve your volunteers as well. But yeah, I think the world is your oyster, really, and there's lots of different things that you can do, and really focus it on what your volunteers, what works for your volunteers, really.
Thanks. Let's have a look at the next question from Debbie. Thanks, Debbie, for getting in touch. Debbie's hoping to coordinate events across the country and looking at whether we need to create separate events on the website or copy them. I think at the moment they need to be done individually, Debbie, but it's good to know, actually, if you're looking at doing multiple events. This is a website that we're building and refining every year now, so perhaps that's something that we can think of for future years. But at the moment, no, you'd be able to copy those events into separate events and pop a separate location down for each of those. Next one. So, how do we attract volunteers that work full time? Do we hold an event with extended hours, i.e. 10 AM to 7 PM? And that's a good idea. And Liz is nodding at that one as well as we're reading it too. I think yeah, to be honest, it's a great idea with these sorts of events to think about who you're trying to get to and what you're trying to achieve, and then do it that way. So if you're bringing along volunteers that are working full time during the day, an evening or a weekend event would be great.
And also don't forget that this year Volunteers Week starts on a Saturday, so the first is a Saturday, which is unusual in that we kind of last year trended well on Twitter because it was not during the weekend, but actually we can see this as being a real benefit, because it does mean that over the Saturday is that first day, and that can be a fantastic day to actually involve your volunteers.
Lovely, yeah, perfect. Completely agree. In fact, NCVO is doing an event for on the Saturday as well, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So next question, Antonia, thank you for getting in touch. So you're not doing an event for Volunteers Week, but you're sending thank you cards to all your volunteers, and we're going to put this on social media, but can you also add a section where organisations talk about what they do for Volunteers Week? That's a really good idea, Antonia. I think on the events listing, I still think you would be able to do that as well. If you're doing that on a particular day, if you're doing a send out of these thank you cards on social media and doing it quite publicly, do feel free to log that as a specific event on social media. But otherwise, do keep in touch about what other activities that you're doing through Twitter, through Instagram, and through Facebook. What I'd say is it's really, if you're celebrating volunteers, it's great to do it publicly. So if you're able to send photos of those cards, feel free to drop us a line as well with them, send them across to us, and we can pop them up on the Instagram account or on our Twitter account, or feel free to post them yourself on social media using the hashtag Volunteers Week.
Yeah, and something, sorry, I should have said about the events listing is that when you actually submit an event, we will check it over just to make sure that it's okay to put up on the website. So there'll be a slight time lag. So if you don't see it going up immediately, and hopefully, certainly in the run-up to the week, we're trying to keep that up to date as possible on a daily basis. But yeah, we're very flexible about what we call an event. So I would definitely say, yeah, if you're sending out cards to your volunteers and you want to celebrate and shout about it, then put it on the events listing. That's fine.
Beautiful. Lovely. And we've got one more question coming from Paula. Thank you, Paula. Paula's with a multi-site national organisation with a few volunteers at each site. What sort of events could involve them all? Good question, Paula. My background is actually with a multi-site national organisation too. I used to be the head of volunteering with Samaritans, and some of the things that we used to do were to just try and find a way to support our branches at each individual site to celebrate Volunteers Week. So we used to get into the habit of sending out a party pack including a packet of biscuits to each of those volunteers, and encouraging them to each of those branches, and encourage them to just have a bit of a tea party at some point through the week. We'll provide the biscuits, we'll provide a bit of bunting and some balloons, but also provided some branded thank you cards for the organisation to use. Liz, I don't know if you've had any experience in that as well.
Well, I mean, one other thing you could think of doing is trying to do something in those branches at the same time as well. So we will be talking about our Twitter party, but actually you could potentially try and involve social media there, depending, and you know, yeah, why not all eat the biscuits at the same time and try and celebrate that? So there are creative ways of trying to do something nationally, although I appreciate it can be tricky. I mean, obviously the other option is that you try and put on an event that people can come to, but you know, there are cost implications for that. So I think creatively really, and yeah, try and come up with something that will be able to work across the whole area that you work in.
Yeah, good point. Fabulous. So I think that's all the questions that we've had sent through now. Thank you very much. Feel free to keep your questions coming through to Clarissa and Rob as well, and we'll take another round of questions a little bit later on. So one of the examples that we did want to talk about though was a chance to hear from an organisation that has celebrated the week before as well. So Liz, you want to talk us through what we've heard from Volunteer Centre Dorset?
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, I'd like to thank very much Izzy from Volunteer Centre Dorset for sending this over to me. So for a minute, I'm going to pretend I'm Izzy. Here at Volunteer Centre Dorset, we're passionate about all things volunteering, and Volunteers Week is our time to shine. This year, we are holding various events throughout the week, including an open day to showcase what we do for our local community. We are also holding a thank you barbecue for all our current volunteers who do a fantastic job. We really couldn't survive without them. We are also running an Art for Wellbeing group on the last day of Volunteers Week, which is open to anyone who wants to get crafty in a casual and supportive environment. If this is popular, we're hoping to continue with the art group every fortnight, so everyone in our community can have a chance to stop and take a breather. We support so many volunteers and charities across Dorset, and the amount of effort and passion that volunteers put in to their roles every day never ceases to amaze me. Volunteers Week is a great way to recognise these achievements and celebrate the national community of volunteers. So thanks once again, Izzy, for that. But hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of the kinds of things that people are doing, and the kinds of things that organisations can get involved in. And also it hints to the fact that these can then carry on beyond Volunteers Week. So Volunteers Week can be a great way to kickstart some things. And yeah, there's so many different things. What I would suggest is have a look at the events listing and get some inspiration from that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a particularly good example too, from a volunteer centre. Volunteer centres are great for championing volunteering locally as well. So if you're looking at connecting with what's happening in your local area, do have a look out for what your local volunteer centre is up to too. If you want to find out how to get to your local volunteer centre, there are links through from both the Volunteers Week and the NCVO website in how to track them down. So yeah, thanks for that, Liz, and thanks Izzy for sending that in. We're going to stop for a quick poll now as well, just to see what sorts of things you might be thinking about doing for Volunteers Week too. So I think in a second, Clarissa's just going to flash the next question up onto the screen, which is what types of event will you be running, would you say? So do you tend to prefer running things like an award ceremony, a taster session, or an information session for new volunteers that might want to get involved? Would you run some sort of outing for them as well for your existing volunteers so they can do something a little bit different, or hold a party or a social, or head to the pub or a barbecue or something along those lines for your existing volunteers? Or are you now well in the digital age and you prefer to do something completely online for your volunteers? Let us know what sorts of things you're up to. Grand, have we got the results? Let's see. Oh, a lot of people doing stuff online, brilliant. But the biggest is a party or a social. I love a party. One thing I'll mention now and say a bit later as well is that at NCVO, we also love to come out and see what people are doing during the week too. So if you feel like inviting us to your party as well, feel free. Grand. And what's coming next then? Taster and information session. Yeah, that tends to be quite a popular one as well for like that recruitment event that you might feel like you want to run whilst talking about your volunteers. And definitely recognising volunteers through award ceremonies, whether that's something through, say, giving a certificate to all of your volunteers for what they all have contributed over the last year, or whether it's picking out those shining stars. And coming in last, only 2% are having outings. I wonder what sort of outings you're having as well. Feel free to send over in the questions and comments box as well what sort of outings you're doing. It'd be great to hear a bit more about that. But let's pop on to our next question as well, which is, have you posted your events on the events listing yet? So just a quick yes, or not quite yet, but you're planning to, or actually it's not something for you to be posting on the events listing. So let us know if you're still planning on popping something up onto the listing over the next month or so. It does take seconds to do, which is yeah, really great, really easy. And it looks like the responses are not yet. Some people have, 6% have, 69% not yet, but they're still planning to. So great. We're looking for, ooh, I think a couple of years ago we had 800 events on the events listing. It'd be great to see more than that this year. So we'll look forward to seeing what events you're doing, and then we can share them on social media too. Fabulous. Thank you very much. So let's get back to the presentation of what else is happening around Volunteers Week. It's the next bit is a little bit of a discussion from me on some tips for getting involved, and we've talked a lot about events so far, but we also need to now have a little bit of a think about what's going on social media. Let me just bring the slides up for you. There we go. Grand. So let's have a bit of a look at what's going on social media. As I've mentioned, Twitter's always been really popular for celebrating Volunteers Week, and I think it's because it breaks down those boundaries or barriers about location and people getting involved. So every year, NCVO Volunteers is on Twitter, and we tend to try and lead the way in encouraging people to get involved, and we'll share as much content as we have. But to try and make it as open and inclusive as possible, anyone can get involved on Twitter using #VolunteersWeek, and that's the best way to get your content seen. We'll be promoting that hashtag everywhere, and so if people are interested in seeing what's happening, they can look at that there. Facebook is another great way to get involved. Your organisation might have a Facebook account, or if not, like I mentioned earlier, feel free to send some content over to us on Facebook, and we'll look at publicising that for you. I know there was somebody in the question round as well, Jenny, asking about getting up volunteer stories. We've got stacks of space on Facebook in particular to share those stories, and it's a really popular way for people to read and hear about what's going on. So feel free to send us some stuff over. What I will say is on Facebook as well, we're also getting a Volunteers Week banner for you to be able to put on your profile picture. So keep an eye on Facebook over the coming weeks, and we'll show you exactly how to do that. Lastly, Instagram. In particular on the Saturday and Sunday, it's great to see some of the pictures and videos that you might send in about either how you're celebrating Volunteers Week, or what your volunteers just get up to generally. So again, feel free to share stuff on Instagram or send stuff over to us. Use #VolunteersWeek, and we'll do what we can to promote it. If you are using social media, we've just got a few top tips to think about. Firstly, always use the #VolunteersWeek. It's the best way to get noticed. Also, pictures get more attention, as do videos as well. So with people scrolling through their Twitter or Facebook or Instagram feeds, or Twitter or Facebook in particular, having an image there, either something that you've put together for yourselves or just a photograph, really does help grab the attention of the person that's scrolling through their social media feed. Do feel free to send some stuff over to us, and we'll try and do our best to retweet it. In particular, we tend to be on Twitter all of the time during Volunteers Week, so do send some stuff over. Videos. If you're thinking about doing video clips, that's a really neat way of a different way of being able to get your message across and your thanks across to volunteers. And it can be done so easily now, just using a mobile phone and uploading from there. What we would say is usually for social media though, it's a good idea to try and keep those clips as short, pretty short, so that people stay in and see the whole thing. So we normally say what 15 to 30 seconds for a video clip that you're going to be sharing on Twitter in particular. But it's in particular, I think, a great way to perhaps get your chief exec involved or get other volunteers just to give a short clip of how great they think volunteers are and the contribution that they're making. And the last thing is to have a think about when you post as well. We're hosting in particular a Twitter party on Monday the 3rd at 11 o'clock, where we're trying to encourage as many people to get on and use Twitter and use the hashtag Volunteers Week as a way for people to see this hashtag trending and then hopefully come and take a look at what's going on Twitter. But certainly over the weekend, people will be interested to see your pictures, and on the Monday, people will be interested to hear about how you're celebrating the week. Fab. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of social media. If you go to the Volunteers Week website, there is more guidance on how to use social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and other channels as well. If you're partial to a bit of Snapchatting, there's some guidance on there as well for that. But during the week, let's have a look at what the plan is for this year. So on Saturday, the 1st of June, we're as Liz mentioned a little bit early on, it's a bit unusual this year in that the 1st of June is falling on a Saturday. We know that we do really well with social media for Volunteers Week when the launch day is on a weekday, and a lot of volunteer managers and volunteers are perhaps out and about in a weekday doing what they do. So we're having a particular push on the Saturday and Sunday this year for people to send us pictures and videos about what they're up to and what they're doing. But on Saturday the 1st of June in particular, how about asking if you've got a patron for your organisation or a celebrity, local celebrity that endorses you, or a big famous name. With a month to go, you've got plenty of time to get in touch with them and ask them if they wouldn't mind just doing a quick letter of support for your volunteers. But I think this thing is particularly great if you've got a patron or somebody that has been personally affected by whatever work your organisation does, and they want to say a bit of a personal thank you to the volunteers that may have supported them in the past, and that's why they support your charity now. That can be a really great idea to give a different kind of thanks to volunteers, and done in a very public way. So we're doing the same here, and we do have somebody that has written a letter of support for us that we'll be promoting on the 1st of June. So we'd encourage you to have a chat with your patrons and celebrities to do the same. So that's the weekend. What's happening through the week then? So on Monday, the 3rd of June, this is when we're going to be holding our Twitter launch party this year. That's going to be happening at 11 AM on Monday, the 3rd of June. As I mentioned, I think it was on the 2nd or 3rd slide of this webinar, we always tend to trend on Twitter. And during this hour, we like to try and trend at this particular time. We go for 11 o'clock in the morning because America hasn't woken up just yet, so they're not tweeting about whatever they do, and we're hopefully able to gain a bit of traction there. So it'd be great if, as an organisation, you can pop the 11 AM on Monday the 3rd of June as the time to be on Twitter and see what's going on and to be tweeting about your volunteers. So from on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to be holding 3 themed days. These are themes that have been suggested to us by organisations that want to focus on a particular type of volunteer or type of volunteering. And this year we've decided to go for three themes. On the Tuesday, to start off with, talking about employer-supported volunteering, and that can be whether these are volunteers that are in your organisation through a particular partnership with a local business, or whether an organisation releases employees to come and spend some time with your organisation, or perhaps you have some skills-based volunteers, perhaps as trustees or as advisors within your organisation. What we'd like to do this year is just put a little bit of a focus on those on Tuesday the 4th of June. So that's worth bearing in mind. The theme for the day after, on Wednesday the 5th of June, is on youth volunteering. This is something that we did last year in partnership with Step Up to Serve and the I Will campaign, #IWill. This year we're partnering up with them again, and we're going to be having some I Will ambassadors taking over the NCVO volunteering Twitter account. They're also going to be taking over the I Will Twitter account as well, talking about all of the great stuff that young people do when they get involved in volunteering. In particular, we've been working with the I Will campaign on that, and they're asking people to use, as well as #VolunteersWeek, #PowerOfYouth on this day, and they're going to be talking to their networks about using both of those hashtags. That's a great way just to be able to get a little bit more visibility for your organisation. What sorts of things can you do? Well, perhaps if you've got some young volunteers, get them to record a short video about what they do and why they get involved in volunteering, or ask a young volunteer to write a blog about their experience of volunteering to share on your website or through your social media channels. Perhaps, like we mentioned earlier, a short video clip from the CEO as well, highlighting the unique impact that young volunteers make, or getting one or more young volunteers to take over your social media channels for the day as well. So I know that's what we'll be doing here. So that's the Wednesday, that focus on youth volunteering. Thursday the 6th of June, we're going to talk about the difference that volunteers make, both the impact that volunteers make to your organisation or to the wider world, but also the difference that volunteering makes to volunteers themselves as well, whether it's a boost for their confidence or a boost for their health and well-being, or that they've been able to make new friends. This is really the day for us to be talking about the real benefits of volunteering and the difference that volunteering makes to everyone that gets involved. Now, for those 3 days, we've got some sample tweets that we can send out to you to help you get involved with that, in particular on social media. And I'm going to give you an example of that in just a moment. But before I do, the other couple of things I'll mention is on the Friday, the 7th of June, we're going to be looking back over the week. We're going to be resharing all of the great content that we've seen through the week, letting people have another read about volunteering stories on the website, or sharing your Instagram posts that you've been putting up until that point. One of the bits that I didn't mention is the volunteer Twitter chat as well on Tuesday, the 4th of June. So I'm gonna talk about that in just a moment. But first of all, I promised you about these sample tweets. Over the coming days, we're going to be releasing a comms pack. Now, what this comms pack will have is all of the information that we've talked about on the webinar today, but it'll also include examples of tweets that you can just copy and paste onto Twitter to show how you're supporting the various things. So this is, I'm not going to go through the whole pack now, otherwise the webinar might be a few more hours long. But an example for Wednesday, the 5th of June, and that Spotlight on Youth Social Action, gives you an idea of the things that you could be tweeting about. So, for example, the one at the bottom there, here's how the Power of Youth helps our organisation and community, and you'd be able to share your picture or your video using that text. Or a couple up from that, talking about how 82% of young volunteers want to make the world a better place. So you can talk about what you're doing to champion that with young volunteers. We'll have sample tweets available for every day throughout the week. One of the bits I mentioned there as well is the Twitter chat for volunteer managers. This is happening on Tuesday from 2 till 3. This is less about members of the public and more for us that support and lead on volunteer management in our organisations to get together and have a chat about how we say thanks to volunteers. One thing that I mentioned is we do this now every year with the Association of Volunteer Managers in partnership with them. So we'll be here tweeting alongside AVM, talking about all of the great ways that you can say thanks, and encouraging people to share the different ways that they say thank you to volunteers and celebrate Volunteers Week too. Last thing that I'm going to tell you before we look at wrapping up is what's NCVO doing during the week? We get asked this question quite a lot, but now we've gotten over the main hump of work and got all of the resources out there for you all to be able to use. We're gearing up for how we're going to be celebrating Volunteers Week too. So about 10 days before, we've already let the press know through our contacts that Volunteers Week is coming. We'll be reminding them 10 days before with a press release, encouraging them again to come and have a look at the events listing and see what's going on over the UK. We'll be producing volunteering stories. These are blogs that go up onto the Volunteers Week website, and we'll be doing one a week in the run up to Volunteers Week. And then on the day, we'll be putting up 1, 2, maybe on popular days, 3 volunteering stories of what's going on through the week. I've mentioned letters of support on the first day, on the Saturday already. And also we'll be on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter all week. We're going to be holding a launch event on Saturday, the 1st of June in London as well. Not many people know this, but it's NCVO's 100th birthday this year. So as part of that, we've decided to put on a bit of a party, and we're inviting volunteers to come along to that launch event too. You might have already received an invitation for that, but if not, and you fancy coming to London to celebrate with us, just drop us a line. We'll send you the details for that. And I've mentioned the Twitter party and the Twitter chat there as well. And the last thing is visiting you. We've already had some invitations to come out and see what different organisations are doing across the UK. So if you'd like for us to come and see what you're up to come and present an event, or just to come and have a drink with you at one of the parties that you're having, I'd be particularly interested to hear about that. So that's what we're personally doing during Volunteers Week to try and celebrate all the great things that volunteers do across the UK. So then, last bit, I'm going to hand back over to you now for any more questions that you might have. So let's have a look, see what we have here. Let's have a look. You mentioned, we've got some just there. Shaun, you mentioned sending branded thank you cards to volunteers. Could you suggest any companies that produce these? Good question. In a word, probably not off the top of my head. What I would say is this could be a great opportunity for you to strike up a good relationship with a corporate sponsor or a partner for Volunteers Week. So if you're a local organisation, there might be a local printer or print press that you know of, or you might want to develop a relationship with, and let them know that if you're running Volunteers Week on a shoestring, let them know that you're doing this to celebrate Volunteers Week, and they might be able to put their logo on the back of the card as well. But then that's right through to some of the bigger organisations might wanting to build up a relationship with any sponsors there too. Liz, you got any thoughts on that as well? Or? Okay, but no, I don't know if there's any specific ones that we can recommend at this point. Let's have a look. There was one question there related to the ideas of outings. We're hoping to take our volunteers to meet volunteers in other museum settings. That's Emma from a museum by the look of it. That sounds like a great idea, to be honest, doing a bit of an exchange trip. What we perhaps know as well, in particular in things like heritage, the heritage sector in museums or places along those lines, volunteers tend to volunteer in those places because they like that setting, because they like being involved in being in a museum and seeing what's on show and understanding that history there. So going to another setting and meeting another bunch of volunteers feels like a great idea to me. What else do we have there? Can we produce our own 6x4 vinyl banner and use with our own logo and yours? And I just wanted to say on behalf of our charity, thanks to all of the team involved in producing these resources and info. They're a great help. Thank you, Vanessa. Tell your friends. Yes, you can. Yes, you can, definitely. In the communications pack that we're sending out to you as well, that's going to come out in the next few days, we're also going to put down the codes for what all of the Volunteers Week colours are as well. So if you are working with a designer or a printer on producing stuff like that, you'll have exactly what all of the Volunteers Week colours are that we use for things like the logo and the images that you can download there as well. But yeah, we're really keen that you use this logo far and wide to promote what's what's going on Volunteers Week. So yes, feel free to. Next question. Please, can you explain more about the volunteer manager chat on the 4th of June, Jenny? Yeah, sure, Jenny. It's I think what we realised last year, the first year that we ran this, was we do a lot of talking about celebrating volunteers, and in particular volunteer managers that have been doing this for a while are really great at coming up with the ideas about how to celebrate volunteers and volunteering. What we found though is perhaps for some of the newer managers, it was a bit of an unknown actually. So being able to share some ideas around the best ways to say thank you to volunteers, not just during the week, but through the rest of the year as well, would be super helpful. And as volunteer managers are thinking about this stuff during this week, we thought we'd have a bit of a get together on Twitter and talk about what people could do. So it's really it's a bit of a facilitated conversation. We normally pop up questions to prompt the discussion every 10 minutes or so, but it's a chance to be able to share your ideas and your thoughts on the best way to say thanks and to learn from other people too. In particular, this is happening on the day where the theme today, where we're looking at employer supported, skilled and corporate volunteering. So we're probably going to have a little bit of a focus on that, I would say, as well. So if you're interested in coming to chat about employer supported volunteering as well, come along, or just have a look on Twitter and get involved if you feel comfortable. We'll be using hashtag Volunteers Week, and there'll be usually another hashtag that we'll be promoting nearer the time as well, really focusing on the topic of saying thanks. Right, let's have a look at some more questions. Can you post events that are taking place after Volunteers Week? Our volunteers are all invited to our annual staff conference and can be nominated to staff awards. Several volunteers have won awards in previous years, but it's not taking place until mid to late June. Short answer is yes, you can. We're tending to use the events listing quite loosely, that if you are celebrating Volunteers Week or you are running an event that is talking about recognising or celebrating volunteers and that's outside of Volunteers Week, yes, great, send it over, we'll publicise it and we'll pop it up there as well. And actually, if the events listing is really popular through the rest of the year, we'll try and keep a conscious effort and keep an eye on it too, and promoting your events as well. So yeah, please do keep the events coming through. Next question. So we are looking at connecting some of our volunteers that do really varied roles to improve local networks. Do you have any advice how we can do this alongside Volunteers Week? Interesting question. It's Volunteers Week, I think. One of the things, Liz, I don't know about you, one of the things I love about Volunteers Week is it is around volunteering in all its diversity and the different roles that people do in organisations, but almost recognising that no matter what you do and no matter how you do it, your contribution is valuable and it should be celebrated and recognised. So I think that's a great theme. That's a great way to bring together the different volunteers across your organisation to do something. I guess the trick might be thinking about what would interest them all. We know through research that NCVO does that volunteers get involved in what they do because they believe in the cause, and that tends to be the leveler, the thing that brings all volunteers together behind a particular thing. So so perhaps have a think about what the cause is, what is the reason, the purpose why all of your volunteers give time to your organisation. See that as the one thing, that golden thread that binds them all, and perhaps do something about that. And actually, I'd go back to Emma's idea a little bit earlier on about the museum visit. I think that all of the volunteers in the museum perhaps might be doing very varied, different roles. Some of them might be more behind the scenes, looking after exhibits. Some of them might be more up front, thinking about education or visitor experience. But actually, the one thing that binds them all is that love for what's going on in the museum. So if you're able to think about an event that is along those lines, then that could be a real turn on, I would say. Oh, let's have a look down the list and see what else we've got. Antonia recommends they are doing their cards with, oh, Hello Print, very reasonably priced. I should probably say that other suppliers are available. Is the compact being sent through the post or via email? Izzy, thanks for asking. We're going to have it up on the website for everyone to see, but as you've come along to the webinar today, we'll email it through to you as well, so you've had the opportunity to be able to see that there too. Lovely. And we're getting to the point now of the final question. So, will there be details of the volunteer manager chat afterwards? I will be involved at our event on that day and won't be able to join you in the chat. In a word, yes. What we did last year. Who's that from? That's from Marianne. Last year, Joe, who from the Association of Volunteer Managers, did a brilliant blog kind of wrapping up the key themes from that Twitter chat, and we put that blog up on the NCVO website. So all of the tweets will still be there for you to go back and have a look through. But we will wrap up all of what people have been talking about into a blog and make that available for you to see as well. We might ask Joe from the Association of Volunteer Managers to do that for us too. Joe, if you're on the call as well, if you're on the webinar, thank you very much. Lovely. Well, thank you for all of those questions. There's a real good variety of questions there for us to be talking about, but that's pretty much all we've got time for now, I'm afraid. There's a couple of other questions that might have pinged through, so keep an eye on Twitter over the next hour or so, and if we see any more questions that we've not had the chance to answer, we'll pop up those answers up on Twitter. So keep an eye on @NCVO Volunteers, #VolunteersWeek, and we'll pop some answers up there for you. But I guess just to, oh, sorry, Liz,
just go ahead.
Just to wrap up then, just wanted to let you know kind of who's been working on all of this stuff over the last 6 months or so, and send a bit of a big thank you out to them. We've got the NCVO campaign team here as well, that are people across the whole of NCVO that have been working to try and prepare these template press releases or put together webinars like today. We've also worked closely with our partners from Volunteers Scotland, Volunteer Now in Northern Ireland, and WCVA in Wales. But also we've got a working group of partner organisations that you can see there. I won't read them all out, but you can see their details there, and their names are up on the Volunteers Week website. And it's really that crowd that have helped us think about the themes and the ideas, the concepts for Volunteers Week for this year, and made this year particularly special. So thank you very much to them all. And I think that pretty much wraps things up for us. So Liz, is there anything else from your point of view that you wanted to say or mention?
No, other than to say thank you very much for joining us for this call. It's been really good to be able to share this with you, and we hope you have a very successful Volunteers Week.
Definitely, yeah. Happy Volunteers Week, and we'll look forward to seeing all of the content that you put up over the coming weeks. Thank you very much, everybody.